Hi, my name is Pip. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The Learning Gardener. I have been working on this garden for about 10 weeks, and 3 days after I moved in, I got a puppy, Rafa, who has made the gardening process a little bit trickier. I moved into this place primarily because it had a garden patch that, yes, was full of weeds and really compacted soil, but I was allowed to plant it up. And at the last place I lived, I wasn't allowed to really do anything because I had a really difficult landlord. So this garden was a really big selling point, and the first thing I did was spray the weeds and cover them with newspaper and get some more soil. I am aware of the fact that I am just renting here, so I don't want to invest too much money into this garden, but I did want to see if I could make a productive garden because, like so many of us, at the beginning of 2020, things changed and I got more into gardening because I needed an outlet for my stress. I had previously done a moderate amount of gardening. I lived in Sydney on a very steep rockery that was at times really dangerous to garden in, but very, very difficult to lug things up and down the rockery. And it was very difficult from a sun perspective because it would get torched in summer, and because there's so much rock, it would get the radiating heat back onto the plants as well. And in winter it would basically get no sunlight at all, so you couldn't really plant perennials. Even succulents didn't like it. Australian natives hated it. Hey, Raph! One of the issues was that because the land was so steep, the water just runs straight off it and actually doesn't ever soak into the soil no matter what I did. So, hey, Raffy! So I tried a bunch of things to make that garden work. And one of those things was pots, because I was like, this I can control, I can, amend the soil, I can protect the plants. Well, it turns out I can't. So even if I netted everything up, somehow bush rats still found a way in, and they helped themselves to capsicums and to little cauliflower heads that were just starting to appear. Cockatoos ripped open the netting and ripped out whatever they wanted whenever they wanted. So it was a very unsuccessful attempt at being more self-sufficient, even though I felt an increasing need with the world that we live in to be more self-sufficient. And I probably had maybe like one decent capsicum, so sweet pepper bush that was quite productive, that I managed to get most of the capsicums away from the cockatoos and the bush rats, but that was really it. Everything else got attacked and mauled, and I really struggled to have a productive garden. So this I am very excited about. So I thought I would take you on a little gardening tour. It is my hope that with this channel we can all learn something. So beginner gardeners like myself can learn stuff in the comments from people who maybe know a little bit or a lot more than I do. I'm also hoping that other beginner gardeners might be inspired to give it a whirl at their place and just see how they go, because I've learnt a lot just in 10 weeks of being here and gardening. And even last year with sowing my first onion seeds, I learnt a ton from that. I don't have the most sensitive taste buds. My best friend does, and she tells me that the onions I grew were far and away better than the ones we can buy at the supermarket, and that they're really juicy. I certainly noticed that they are more juicy, which is a problem for storing, so I have bought some long keeper onions, and I think I'm going to try and water them a little less frequently to see if they're a little less juicy and a little bit more storage friendly. So these are the kind of things that I'm learning as I go. Please feel free to jump into the comments and let me know if you have any ideas or suggestions for things I could try, because I would love that. And it would be very helpful to me and hopefully helpful to other people reading the comments. One of the things I have had to contend with in this garden is having a new puppy. And I haven't had a new puppy in 15 and a half years. And it's a lot more work than I remember it being. I have built makeshift fencing back here. It's a difficult spot because it's all concreted, so there's nothing that I can embed any stakes or anything into. Even around the lemon tree to the side, it's all brick and concrete, and I just can't wedge something in there. And the problem with that is that behind the garden bed there is this kind of dumping ground of like building materials and things like that that either belong to the previous tenant or the actual owner, and so I don't know if I can remove it. I don't particularly want to because I'm terrified of spiders, and there will be some spiders in there for sure, and there's probably also rats and stuff in there, so I don't really want to know about it. But I do have to contend with that area because Rafa loves to explore it. He really enjoys chasing lizards to the point where a lot of my pots have actually been thrashed from him using them as a jumping ground to chase the lizards. So that's been fun, and he likes to explore that back part, and unfortunately he seems to always sense when the vet has closed, so that he goes in there, gets bitten by a spider, starts having an allergic reaction to that, and we have to call in the vet after hours to deal with that, which in a rural coastal area is $360 before you even get treated. So putting things like the corn in as soon as we moved in were a real priority. I was hoping that would kind of act as a natural barricade, but it turns out I have a puppy with a lot of confidence, and so he used that as an area to bury his pig's ears. I tried a couple of different options, and what seems to be working so far is I've put in a few stakes and put some wire around it, and I'm going to grow peas on that. Hopefully it's not too late in the season for them to actually fruit, but it was worth a try and worth using that to block Rafa from getting into the biting place. The difficulty with having a puppy also is that he likes to dig, which is why I am now covered in dirt, because he was just over there digging a hole in the garden and I had to stop him. He has squashed plants. He has stepped on marigolds. He doesn't really care what he steps on. So really this garden is the survival of the fittest, and Lord only knows what's going to survive a puppy, and I guess it's a bit of a question mark with how he's going to come out of it if he keeps going back into the spider den and if he keeps chasing bees, because he really enjoys chasing flies and he thinks that bees are the same thing, which means that I have to mow the grass quite regularly in order to prevent it from flowering, the clover, because then it becomes just a swarm of bees and he thinks it's the best thing ever, and I can't stop him from chasing the bees except for not letting him outside, which is not fair. When I planted this garden, what I was hoping to do was to really try and focus on companion planting and natural insect repellents, and so I have certain plants like marigolds and chives and pyrethrum and things like that planted all around the garden to try and detract bugs. Unfortunately, that hasn't really been all that effective. I have lost many corn due to, I assume, bush rats. I can't bait for snails and slugs, and so my bok choy and my cauliflower in particular have been suffering. But it's also just been a learning process of how I am going to manage this. We've also had floods in the last couple of weeks, so we had 300 mils in like 3 days, and I think it was like in the last month we've probably had close to 700 mils of rain. We've had a lot, and so I had plants like a waratah that had just bloomed that was so happy and healthy that are now dead or losing the will to live. Most of those plants are Australian natives, but there's still things that I have to deal with and decide if they are gone or if they are salvageable. I had capsicums that decided that they no longer wish to be part of this experiment, so it's just been a bit of a weird process, and I've gone from being delighted with how quickly things filled up and how quickly the bok choy and the rocket became productive to being like, oh my god, I was just about to harvest and everything's been decimated by floods or by bugs. Because this is a rental property and I'm aware that I probably won't continue living here for too long, I'm trying not to invest too much money into the garden because it's not mine. So other than putting in soil when I first moved in, just as like a topsoil covering, because the soil was very compacted and full of weeds, which I had sprayed and covered in newspaper, I haven't really invested that much money in. 95% of what you see here is all grown from seed by me. A couple of things I tried to grow from seed, like leeks, and then I discovered that the leek seeds I had were expired, which is why they didn't come up. So I bought a packet of leeks from the local nursery, and I bought the corn from the local nursery because I knew I was really cutting it fine with the seasonal planting of the corn, and so I needed to get a head start if I wanted to actually be able to harvest before winter. Even though I was initially really careful about companion planting, once I saw how quickly things like the bok choy were taking off, I wanted to plant more. Couldn't use my pots because either Rafa was trampling them and I was kind of hoping he was going to grow out of that, or they're flowering still, even though some of them are looking a bit rough after the flood, and they're still providing pollen and things like that for the bees, which I think is really important. So I don't want to pull them out until they're a little bit more done. So the companion planting kind of fell by the wayside, and I just started putting things in wherever they fit, keeping in mind that this is not my house and that I'm going to have to pack up and go at some point. I'm just trying to get an idea of germination rates and what plants you can push a little bit and fudge the lines with. I'm just trying to learn as much as possible because I would like to get a property one day where I could have a cut flower garden, which is the dream, and a productive veggie patch. Realistically, supply chain issues, cost of living increases, and pandemics have driven me to really want to put an accelerator on my self-sufficiency ideals. This half of the garden bed is mostly edible and this half is all flowers. So over here we've got some rocket, Walla Walla onions, there's 2 rows of those. There is silver beets, leeks and shallots, and just behind here hopefully there is one little lettuce plant that came up. I did plant some spinach, but seems pretty questionable so far. Here we've got some Cosmos Candy Pink stripe, and I've got a range of colors of paper daisies. I had some leftover ornamental kale. I also planted some bells of Ireland, and I forget what those ones are. These ones are hollyhocks, which I know can be a little bit toxic to dogs. I was really hoping for the best, that Rafa would not be interested in the garden, but as it happens he is an avid gardener. But I put them kind of to the back of the bed just in case. And I've got some red basil here and some yarrow tucked away. These sunflowers were all grown from the seeds of a sunflower I grew in summer and wanted to try and see if I could just keep it going. Obviously we have the very chewed corn and more marigolds. This is a transplanted zucchini. Sorry about the background noise, but it's been raining so much, everyone's got to do what they can while they can. This is the zucchini plant that got half destroyed by the wind, and I harvested yesterday, but there is still some coming up, but you can see the damage in there from the windstorm that just decimated half this plant. I've got little dots of echinacea all around to bring the bees in and to be a perennial, and this is part of my hopeful pest protection. So there is a tansy, there is a pyrethrum plant, and there are some chives. I recently planted some seeds from a butternut pumpkin that I made into soup, and they have started to sprout, and these are supposed to be some small sweet pumpkins, so we'll see how we go. This poor little marigold was a victim of the floods, and it's going to end up in the compost bin. And I've got some cucumbers, some Lebanese cucumbers, and some little cucamelons just poking out down here. And some zinnias. I thought I'd give it a whirl because there was a couple weeks left of summer, but they don't seem to be doing all that well. And to be fair, I sowed a whole bunch of flower seeds in here, and then little riffraff came along and thought it might be a fantastic digging zone. So I've recently popped a whole bunch of leeks and onions in here. Beside the sweet small pumpkin, I've got some more leeks and some beans coming up. So these beans were part of my dog strategy because I couldn't actually get any chicken wire to fence this off, and oh my god! There's a bean! I think these are sugar snap peas, and these are the weeds that keep cropping up everywhere. And this is the mischief monster that hunts for lizards by jumping in my pots and in places he's not supposed to go. I can't believe there's already one. I'm gonna pluck it before one of the bush rats take it and test it. Oh, that is super nice. So I've got some carrots, some celery that are moving really slowly, and I planted some lettuce in between the celeries just to try and get some more room, but the slugs have mostly appreciated that. And more celery, more echinacea, and the beautiful salvia which has just loved life here. I didn't think anything was happening with these cosmos, however you want to say it. And then all of a sudden they've just exploded and they are divine, and the bees are really enjoying them. This is a newly planted lemon tree with some billy buttons behind it, which never actually flowered, but that's okay. Maybe it will eventually. And these are some dahlias that have been going for 4 years. And they just come up every year and the bees love them. And there's a massive swarm of bees on them at the moment, so I'm not going to push past them because I'm super allergic. And I've got a little orange tree that's been working for 18 months nearly, and it's got some pretty decent fruit on it, which you probably can't see from here. Maybe. But at least there are happy bees living for this dahlia. That is absolutely beautiful. These are my sad little wet billy buttons, and I had a whole stack dried inside, and I had a whole stack of straw flowers dried inside, but with the rain the whole house experienced a mold explosion and they went down too. I had no idea they got that big though, so they might not be the best choice for a raised garden bed in the future, especially not when I would like to clear the rest of it out, but can't bear to disturb those. I have a couple of flannel flowers like this one, which I was super excited to have, and honestly this one just got stuffed in this pot because Rafa kept chewing it, and I think I'll move it as soon as I can because this is a water saving pot, and honestly I'll never use water saving pots again because they just end up pooling rotten water at the bottom, and I've had to tip them out every day with all this rain. Speaking of which, here comes more rain. You're looking for bees, are you? Not your best choice. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.